Most people never become rich, not because they lack intelligence, opportunity, or even effort, but because they lack the blueprint, the mental blueprint. You see, every structure begins with a plan. No architect begins construction without first drawing out the design. No builder pours concrete without a map to follow. But when it comes to building wealth, most people simply guess. They hope, they improvise, and then they wonder why the outcome is fragile, incomplete, or non-existent. Getting rich, truly rich, is not an accident. It is a mental construction project. And like all construction, it requires preparation, precision, and order. If you've ever wondered why some individuals seem to multiply their income with calm consistency while others struggle for decades, the answer lies in how they think, how they've trained their minds to operate. Because money, before it exists in your bank account, must first exist in your mind. And today I want to give you that structure, the mental blueprint to get rich. Not a gimmick, not a trick, a system of thought that has built fortunes before and will build them again for those who will adopt it with discipline and faith. Now let's begin with this foundational truth. Wealth is not the result of hard work alone. If hard work alone created wealth, every laborer on earth would be a millionaire. But that is not the case. The truth is, hard work is only one ingredient, and not even the first. The first ingredient is vision, and not vague desire, but specific, clearly defined, relentlessly held vision. The individual who becomes rich does not stumble into money. They see it first in the theater of their mind. They create a picture, an amount, a timeline, a strategy, a vehicle. They see the outcome so clearly that it begins to influence their behavior. They rise differently, they think differently, they speak differently, not because they have money, but because they've already claimed it in their mind. They've made it real before it's visible, and that is the first law of riches. You must create wealth mentally before you will ever hold it physically. The universe rewards clarity. The mind responds to structure. You are not waiting on money. Money is waiting on you to give it a destination.
Let me say something that may shift your entire relationship with wealth. Money is not emotional. It does not favor good people over bad people. It is not spiritual or evil. It is neutral. It flows where it is respected, commanded, and multiplied. That means if you do not yet have it, you do not yet understand it. And that's good news. Because anything you do not understand, you can learn. Anything you have not mastered, you can study. Money follows value, and value is created by thought turned into form. The individual who becomes rich starts by asking, how can I serve more people? How can I solve bigger problems? How can I improve systems, create results, or multiply outcomes for others? That thinking leads to action. That action leads to service, and that service leads to income. This is not magic. This is structure. Money is a certificate of service rendered. If you want more of it, render more service, smarter, better, deeper, or wider than you have before.
Now here's the next principle. Your subconscious mind is a goal-seeking mechanism. Whatever you feed it with emotion and repetition, it begins to seek out, attract, and construct in your reality. That means every word you speak, every affirmation you repeat, every image you dwell upon is shaping your financial outcome. If you tell yourself, money is hard to get, your mind obeys. If you say, I can't afford that, your subconscious believes you and restricts possibility. But if you say, I am building wealth with clarity and purpose, and you say it consistently, your mind begins to rewire your behavior. You walk differently. You see opportunity where you once saw limitation. This is not theory. This is neurological fact. The brain builds according to the blueprint it is given. And most people have installed a poverty blueprint without realizing it. They inherited it from their parents, their environment, their culture. But here's the truth. You are not obligated to keep that blueprint. You can replace it, and you must, because no structure can rise above its plan. Let's go even deeper. The person who becomes rich has developed one crucial ability. They manage emotion with precision, because the path to wealth is not always smooth. It includes setbacks, delays, criticism, and confusion. The average person reacts emotionally to those experiences. They panic, they complain, they quit. But the person who is mentally rich responds with logic, with calm, with correction, because they know emotion makes you reactive, but structure makes you resilient. If your wealth is based on emotion, it will rise and fall with your mood. But if it is built on principle, it will stand through any season. This is why you must train your mind to remain focused, regardless of external noise. You do not need to feel rich to become rich. You need to think like someone who already is. Because thinking leads behavior, behavior leads habit, and habit builds the financial foundation you are standing on or sinking in. I want you to take this very seriously. You cannot out-earn your self-image. You will always behave in alignment with who you believe yourself to be. That means if you still see yourself as broke, as small, as undeserving, your actions will match that image. But if you choose to upgrade your identity, your financial reality must follow. That begins with how you speak to yourself, what you visualize, what you tolerate, what you allow. The mentally rich individual says, I deserve abundance, not because I'm entitled to it, but because I'm aligned with it. I serve, I solve, I contribute, and I will not apologize for receiving the harvest of the seeds I have planted. That identity drives everything. It changes how you negotiate, how you invest, how you work, how you rest. Money is attracted to confidence, not arrogance, but certainty. And that certainty comes from alignment between thought, word, and action. Let me give you something very practical. Write down your financial vision today. Not someday, today. Write it in the present tense, as if it already exists. I earn $VUCs per year. I generate income through VUC. I serve VUC. I multiply my money by VUC. Do not make it vague. Make it real. Make it measurable. Then read it every morning, speak it aloud, visualize it in detail. Why? Because repetition is how the subconscious accepts new commands. One-time effort means nothing. Daily repetition rewires belief. And belief once installed becomes behavior, and behavior sustained becomes wealth. If you're not rich yet, you're not broken. You're simply operating from an outdated program. And the good news is, you can rewrite it. You are the programmer, and your mind is waiting for your next command. So now we come to the question, are you ready to install the mental blueprint to get rich? Not just to feel good, not just to learn something new, but to live differently, to build deliberately, to become the kind of person who no longer chases wealth, but attracts it by identity, behavior, and service. If that is your answer, then begin now. Begin today, because the person who waits for perfect timing never begins. But the one who begins, even imperfectly, triggers the chain reaction of transformation. Your future is waiting, but it will not wait forever. So take out your notepad, write the vision, install the belief, align the behavior, and walk forward with the certainty that wealth is not luck. It is the logical result of a trained, directed, and focused mind. The blueprint is yours now. The question is, what will you build with it? The second part of the mental blueprint to get rich is rooted in something most people overlook completely: time consciousness. Wealth is not just a function of money, it is a function of how you use time. The person destined to become rich understands that every minute carries weight, that every hour has a cost, that time once spent is never returned, and so they become meticulous about how it's used. They don't fill their calendar with distraction, delay, or indulgence. They fill it with intention, with tasks that compound, with activities that produce either results or clarity. You see, the wealthy person doesn't just ask, what do I want to do today? They ask, what is the highest use of my time today? That question changes everything. It rewires their focus, sharpens their decisions, and filters out 95% of the noise that keeps average people broke. Because time, like money, can be invested or wasted, and your wealth will always reflect which one you've been doing most. Now take a moment to consider this. Every rich person you admire has mastered the art of buying back their time. They do this by delegating, automating, and prioritizing. They refuse to be the bottleneck in their own success. Instead of doing everything themselves, they focus only on what produces the highest return, and they either eliminate or outsource the rest. They do not wear busyness as a badge of honor. They pursue effectiveness, they measure outcomes. Because working more hours does not make you rich. Working the right hours on the right things does. The person who becomes wealthy sees time as their most valuable asset. They guard it, they plan it, they protect it from people, from interruptions, from meaningless tasks, because they know that if you don't control your time, someone else will. Let's examine another truth. Every dollar you earn is tied to a problem you've solved. That means your income is a direct reflection of how much value you are creating and for how many people. If you want to increase your wealth, increase the scale or depth of the problems you solve, the wealthy think in terms of scale. They don't just think, how can I help one person? They ask, how can I help 1,000, 1 million? They build systems. They create leverage. They use tools, technology, and teams to expand their impact. The mentally poor try to do it all themselves. They think small. They fear systems. But the mentally rich understand leverage. They understand that ideas, when multiplied by action and scale, become wealth. And that means thinking bigger than you're comfortable with. That means moving from service to system, from product to process, from hours to outcomes. Wealthy people don't trade time for money, they trade value for money. and they make sure that value is repeatable and scalable. Here's a shift in thinking that can unlock everything. Stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like a producer. Consumers are always asking, what can I buy? Producers ask, what can I create? Consumers focus on price. Producers focus on value. The rich are producers. They produce content, products, services, systems, investments. They focus on creation, not consumption. This doesn't mean they never buy. It means they buy with intention. They buy tools, not toys, assets, not distractions. And when they do spend, it's strategic, it's purposeful, because they understand that every dollar spent is a vote for the kind of future they are building. The mentally rich are not stingy, but they are selective. They see money as a tool, not a toy. And because of that, it multiplies under their stewardship. Let me now introduce a concept that is central to the wealthy mind, the money thermostat. Every person has an internal set point for what they believe they're allowed to earn, hold, and grow. This set point controls your behavior more than any strategy ever will. If your internal thermostat is set at $50,000 a year, you will sabotage, stall, or retreat the moment your income rises above that level unless you change the setting. This is why lottery winners often return to poverty. Their external income changed, but their internal identity did not. The rich raise their thermostat intentionally. They do it by expanding what they believe is normal. They surround themselves with people who normalize wealth. They study money until they're fluent in it. They speak the language. They upgrade their environment. They expand their expectations. And slowly the thermostat rises until what once felt impossible now feels inevitable. That is the invisible switch that creates lasting wealth, a belief system that matches your desired income. Let's talk now about emotional intelligence. Because wealth is not built through logic alone, it is built through calm decision-making under pressure. The poor panic, they chase, they react. The wealthy respond, they plan, they pause before they move, because they know that one emotional mistake can cost years of progress. They train themselves to remain calm when others are frantic. And that calmness is not passive, it's powerful. It gives them an edge, because while others are rushing, guessing, or reacting, the wealthy are calculating, watching, positioning. Emotional control is financial control. You cannot make powerful financial decisions if you are driven by fear, greed, or ego. That's why wealthy people often seem quiet, deliberate, strategic, not because they don't feel, but because they've trained their emotions to serve their vision, not sabotage it. Another pillar in the mental blueprint is this: never outsource your financial education. You can delegate tasks, hire advisors, build teams, but your relationship with money must be personal, disciplined, and informed. The rich read, they study, they ask questions, they track their numbers. They know where every dollar is going and why. They don't blindly follow trends. They understand cash flow, assets, liabilities, returns, risk. They don't just earn, they manage. And they don't just manage, they multiply. Financial literacy is not optional. It's essential, and you don't need to be a genius, you just need to be consistent. One book per month, one course per quarter, one conversation per week. Over time, that education compounds. It rewires how you see, earn, and grow money, and eventually it becomes instinct. And once something becomes instinct, it becomes identity. Let me close this part by saying this. Wealth is not about the car you drive, the house you live in, or the numbers in your bank account. It's about the freedom to live your life by design, to wake up when you choose, to work on what matters, to give generously, to move without permission. And that kind of life begins with a mind that refuses to live on default, a mind that studies, stretches, adapts, and applies. That's the mind you're building now. That's the blueprint you're installing. One thought at a time, one behavior at a time, one upgrade at a time. And if you keep going, keep showing up, keep applying, keep refining, you'll look up one day and realize the wealth isn't coming, it's already here, because it lives in how you think, how you speak, how you decide, and most of all, how you believe. There's a point in every wealth journey where a person stops chasing tactics and starts mastering principles. Tactics are temporary, they change with trends, with platforms, with markets, but principles are timeless. They are laws, and the mentally rich live by laws, not by trends. One of the most powerful wealth-building principles is this: money flows toward clarity, certainty, and control. When you are clear on what you want, certain about your path, and in control of your behavior, money will begin to respond. This is not philosophy, it is practical. Think of it this way. Would you invest in a company that has no clear plan, no direction, and no control over its operations? Of course not. And yet most people run their lives that way, and then wonder why wealth won't stay. You must become the CEO of your life. That means vision. That means strategy. That means systems. When your life operates with clarity, certainty, and control, you become a magnet for wealth, because you now mirror the conditions that wealth requires to grow. Let's look now at how the mentally rich approach goals. They do not write them once and forget them. They write them daily. They imprint them on the mind. They obsess not emotionally but structurally. Their goals are not vague hopes like, I want to be rich. Their goals are precise, measurable, dated, and active. By December 31st, I earned $200,000 annually through consulting, online programs, and passive investments. That is a command to the subconscious. That is a blueprint. And that blueprint is repeated, visualized, reviewed, refined, because the mind, like a computer, needs consistent input to produce consistent output. One-time goals do not build wealth. Repeated, reinforced, emotionally charged goals do. The mind must be led, and you lead it through repetition, visualization, and reinforcement. The wealthy person is not trying to remember their goal, they've made it unforgettable. Now let's speak about behavior. The mentally rich do not act from feeling, they act from principle. They understand that your emotions cannot be the driver of your financial decisions. If they are, you will veer off course at the first sign of discomfort, fear, or resistance. Feelings are data, but they are not direction. The wealthy use routines, rituals, and systems to guide their day, not motivation. Motivation fades, systems don't. This is why their habits seem almost robotic to others. They wake up early, they study, they invest. They follow a structure that produces results whether they feel like it or not. And that structure protects them, it keeps them consistent. And consistency is the hidden ingredient in every fortune. You don't build wealth in a day, you build it daily. And you do that by showing up on the days you feel like it, and especially on the days you don't. Let me now introduce a distinction that the mentally rich live by: income versus equity. Most people chase income, trading time for dollars, but the wealthy think in terms of ownership, equity, assets, multiplication. They don't ask, how much am I being paid today? They ask, what am I building that will pay me forever? They invest their energy into creating things that continue to produce even when they stop working. Whether it's real estate, intellectual property, businesses, or investments, the key is leverage. The mentally rich understand that time is finite, but wealth is not. So they build things that separate their income from their effort. And that begins with a shift in mindset, from employee to owner, from hourly thinking to legacy thinking, from working in the business to building the business. This is not just financial, it's psychological. You begin to see the world differently. You begin to make decisions based on long-term gain, not short-term pleasure. Here's another critical shift. The mentally rich do not envy the rich. They study them. They don't resent wealth, they decode it. If someone is doing better than them financially, they don't criticize. They ask, what systems are they using? What decisions did they make that I haven't yet made? What can I learn from their model? This attitude of humility and curiosity accelerates growth, because wealth is not a mystery, it's a pattern. And patterns can be learned, copied, refined, and repeated, but most people let pride block their progress. They would rather stay stuck and right than change and rise. The wealthy surrender their ego to the goal. They ask better questions, they listen longer, they implement faster, and because of that, they grow while others argue. If you're serious about getting rich, stop debating and start modeling. Find those who've done what you want to do, learn their principles, apply them with urgency, and then build your own pattern, one that others will one day study. Let's talk now about faith. Not religious faith, strategic faith. The belief that your effort, when aligned with principle, must produce results. The mentally rich operate from this faith. They don't know how every detail will unfold, but they believe in the law of cause and effect. They know that if they plant good seeds in good soil with consistent care, the harvest is inevitable. They don't panic when the results are delayed. They trust the process, and that trust gives them patience, not passive patience, but active, disciplined patience. They continue to plant, water, and protect their field. They do not uproot their seeds every week to check on them. They work with a calm expectation that what they have built internally must manifest externally. That kind of faith is rare, but it is powerful. It produces emotional stability in times of doubt, and that stability allows for sharper decisions, better relationships, and greater endurance. Success rewards those who stay the course long enough to earn it. Now let's discuss generosity, because true wealth is not measured only by what you keep, but by what you give. The mentally rich give strategically. They don't give to impress, they give to invest. In people, in causes, in the expansion of good. And they give from a place of abundance, not scarcity, because they've trained their mind to believe that money is a flow, not a storage unit. They know that the more value they release into the world, the more comes back. This is not about being naive, it's about understanding circulation. The wealthy understand that money is energy, and when hoarded in fear, it stagnates. But when directed with purpose, it multiplies. And that multiplication is not just financial, it's emotional, relational, spiritual. The wealthy are generous, not because they have more, but because they are more. And that generosity becomes a magnet. It attracts allies, deals, insights, and miracles that money alone could never purchase. Finally, let me remind you, the mental blueprint to get rich is not something you read once. It's something you live. Repeatedly, relentlessly, day after day. And as you apply it, you will begin to feel the shift. In your language, in your posture, in your decisions, in your income. And soon, what once felt foreign will become natural. And that's when you'll know the blueprint has been installed. Wealth is no longer an idea, it is your identity. You are no longer reaching, you are receiving, not by chance, not by luck, but by law. The fourth layer of the mental blueprint to get rich begins with a concept that is often misunderstood, even by those who are already successful: financial thermostat calibration. Every person alive has an internal comfort zone when it comes to money, an invisible setting that dictates how much wealth they feel is appropriate, safe, or normal for them to hold. If your income rises above that internal setting, you will unconsciously find ways to reduce it through procrastination, poor decisions, overspending, or subtle sabotage. If it falls too far below, you'll feel stress, urgency, even panic, and you'll begin to act with intensity until you return to that set point. This phenomenon is real, measurable, and it explains why many people remain at the same income level for years, regardless of their talent or effort. The mentally rich, however, don't just accept their thermostat, they raise it, deliberately, strategically, repeatedly. They do it by expanding their identity, upgrading their environment, and surrounding themselves with new standards. Because wealth is not just earned, it is allowed, and you can only allow what you believe is normal for you. Take a moment to reflect. Who do you spend time with? What income levels do you see as average or realistic? What messages about money did you absorb growing up? These questions matter. They reveal your current financial programming. The person who becomes rich studies these programs with the intensity of a software engineer. They look at their inputs, they identify the bugs, and then they reprogram. They read different books, they enter different rooms, they ask different questions. And most of all, they expose themselves to wealth until it no longer feels foreign. They normalize it. They walk through high-end neighborhoods. They listen to high-level conversations. They study the habits, speech patterns, and beliefs of those who live at the level they desire. This is not pretending, it's preloading. The subconscious cannot become what it has not seen, so you must show it, often, repeatedly, until the unfamiliar becomes familiar and the impossible becomes obvious. Here's a truth very few will tell you. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is usually not strategy, it's emotional resistance. It's the part of you that believes wealth is unsafe, that success will isolate you, that money will make you a target, that you're not good enough, smart enough, or lucky enough to hold that kind of power. These are not facts, they're stories. Stories that were either inherited or installed. But they are not final. The mentally rich face these stories head on. They question them, they challenge them, they rewrite them. Not by ignoring them, but by observing them like a scientist. Where did this belief come from? Is it true? Is it helpful? And then they install new beliefs on purpose. Beliefs like, my wealth helps others. I earn more by serving more. Money is a multiplier of who I already am. When those new stories take root, behavior begins to shift. And when behavior shifts, so does your bank account. Let's now focus on the relationship between wealth and identity. You will never rise above the identity you consistently act from. That means if you see yourself as average, your decisions will reflect that. If you see yourself as a high performer, your habits will confirm it. If you see yourself as a future millionaire, your standards will begin to match. This is not ego, it's architecture. The mentally rich build identity first, results second. They begin each day with the question, who do I need to be today to attract the future I desire? And then they behave accordingly. They install the thoughts, words, and actions of that future version of themselves before the results arrive. Why? Because results always trail identity. You must become the person before you receive the outcome. That's why temporary success fades when it's not supported by internal congruence. But lasting wealth sticks because it's aligned with who you've become. Another cornerstone of the mental blueprint is decisiveness. The rich make decisions quickly and change them slowly. The poor make decisions slowly and change them quickly. This is not impulsive, it's clarity. The mentally rich know what they want, and so they don't waste energy deliberating over every small choice. They've already aligned their life with their vision, so most decisions are obvious. Does this support my mission? Yes or no? Does this expand or distract? Yes or no? Because indecision is expensive. It burns time, energy, and confidence. The person who becomes rich simplifies. They trust their instincts, test their theories, and course correct as needed, but they do not hesitate endlessly. They know that speed is power, and that momentum is more valuable than perfection. So they decide, they move, and they learn as they go. Wealth rewards those who act. Let's speak now about risk. The wealthy do not avoid risk. They manage it. They do not gamble, but they do play offense. They study. They plan. They take calculated bets with asymmetric upside. Most people avoid risk because they fear loss. The rich embrace risk because they understand leverage. They know that playing it safe is the most dangerous game of all because it guarantees mediocrity. So they study the game. They build buffers. They hedge intelligently, and then they act boldly. This mindset separates them from the masses. Because while others are frozen by what if, the wealthy are moving with even if. Even if I fail, I'll grow. Even if I lose, I'll learn. Even if it takes longer than expected, I'll refine the plan and keep going. This level of mental resilience is not natural, it's trained. But once trained, it becomes armor, and with that armor, wealth building becomes a matter of time, not luck. Let me now give you one of the most important principles in this entire blueprint. Income follows alignment. When what you do, how you do it, and why you do it are all congruent, money arrives faster. Why? Because you stop fighting yourself. Your energy is no longer divided. Your time is no longer wasted on things that drain you. Your mind becomes clear. Your confidence becomes rooted, and the world feels it. Opportunities begin to find you. People want to work with you. You start attracting instead of chasing. But this only happens when you stop copying others and start honoring your own path. The mentally rich don't chase trends. They create alignment. They find the intersection of their skill, their passion, and the market's need, and then they stay there. That alignment creates flow, and flow accelerates results. So if you feel blocked financially, don't always look outward. Look inward. Are you in alignment, or are you performing someone else's idea of success? Now take this moment and consider everything you've absorbed so far. You're not just gathering information, you're building a mental infrastructure, a mindset engineered to hold wealth. That means clarity, identity, systems, risk management, decision-making, reprogramming. This isn't just about getting rich, it's about becoming someone who never has to worry about money again. Not because they're lucky, but because they've built a mind that earns, keeps, and multiplies wealth by design. The blueprint is already unfolding, but the construction is ongoing. And if you stay with it part by part, brick by brick, you won't just have money, you'll have mastery. And mastery is what makes wealth sustainable. We now arrive at a critical pillar in the mental blueprint to get rich. Your relationship with discipline. Discipline is not punishment. It is not rigidity. It is not suffering for its own sake. Discipline is self-respect in action. It is the bridge between your current self and your future self. The wealthy don't have more willpower, they have more structure. They don't rely on motivation because they know it's unreliable. Instead, they engineer their environment, their schedule, their standards to eliminate friction between who they are and who they're becoming. This is why they appear consistent, because they've removed the need to negotiate with themselves every day. They don't wake up and wonder if they should work. They don't check how they feel before honoring their priorities. They've made the decision once, and now they live in alignment with that decision every day. Discipline, when installed correctly, feels like freedom. Not because it's easy, but because it removes confusion. You always know what to do next. And that clarity compounds faster than talent, faster than luck, faster than any shortcut ever will. Let's make this even more practical. If you want to get rich, track everything. The mentally rich know their numbers, daily, weekly, monthly. They don't guess, they don't hope. They know. They track their income streams, their expenses, their net worth, their habits, their time. Why? Because what you measure, you can improve. Most people avoid tracking because they fear the truth, but the wealthy pursue truth, even when it's uncomfortable. They want feedback. They want reality. Because they understand that numbers don't lie, only feelings do. If you don't know where your money is going, you're not in control, you're gambling. But when you track, you begin to lead. You start making adjustments that matter. You find the leaks, you plug them. You find the multipliers, you expand them. And suddenly, you're not surviving, you're compounding. This is not complex, it's just uncommon. Because very few people are willing to hold themselves to that level of awareness. But those who do, they rise quickly. Now we must talk about the enemy of all wealth, distraction. In today's world, attention is the most valuable currency, and most people are broke. Not financially, but mentally. Their focus is fractured. Their attention is for sale. Their energy is scattered across 1,000 trivial things, none of which move the needle. But the rich, they protect their attention like gold. They guard their focus with ferocity. They say no more than they say yes. They curate their environment. They eliminate notifications. They control their inputs. Because they understand this fundamental truth: where focus goes, energy flows. And where energy flows, results grow. Wealth is not about doing everything. It's about doing the right things deeply without interruption over time. The mentally rich don't chase dopamine. They chase results. They build routines that prioritize depth over speed, silence over noise, creation over consumption. And because of that, they enter states of concentration that most people never taste. That concentration becomes their edge, and that edge over time becomes a fortune. Another vital distinction: the mentally rich don't confuse motion with progress. They understand that being busy is not the same as being effective. They don't glorify hustle. They measure results. They don't work harder for the sake of appearances. They work smarter for the sake of impact. This means constant refinement. They review their week. They audit their process. They ask what's working, what isn't, where's the waste. They remove what doesn't produce. They double down on what does. They optimize relentlessly, not because they're perfectionists, but because they're builders. And builders respect the blueprint. They know that sloppy execution ruins great ideas, so they slow down when it matters. They zoom in on the details. They value precision, and because of that, they build things that last: systems, products, brands, habits, relationships. They are not in a hurry to impress. They are in a rhythm to improve, and that rhythm becomes unstoppable. Let's speak now about the role of health. Wealth without energy is a hollow victory. The mentally rich treat their body as a performance machine, not for vanity but for vitality. They know that energy fuels clarity, creativity, and resilience. So they sleep, they hydrate, they train, they eat for fuel, not just pleasure. They don't wait for burnout to change, they prevent it through proactive care. This isn't about extremes, it's about excellence. A strong body supports a strong mind, and a strong mind builds wealth faster, with fewer breakdowns. Most people trade their health for money. The wealthy build both, simultaneously, intentionally, because they've realized that a tired mind makes weak decisions, and wealth is a byproduct of repeated high-quality decisions. That means your body is not separate from your success. It's the foundation of it. Let me now challenge a belief that has kept millions stuck: the idea that you need permission. You don't. You don't need to wait until you feel ready. You don't need someone to approve your ambition. The mentally rich operate with internal permission. They give themselves the green light. They move before they're validated. They act before they're acknowledged, because they know that waiting to feel ready is a trap. Readiness is built through motion, not through rumination. Confidence comes from keeping promises to yourself, not from collecting praise. The rich act first, learn fast, and adjust as they go. They don't wait for credentials. They create credibility through consistency. This is not arrogance. This is ownership. And ownership is what makes wealth inevitable, not because it guarantees ease, but because it eliminates excuses. Now let's explore one of the most misunderstood traits of the wealthy: emotional detachment from money. The mentally rich are not controlled by the number in their bank account. They respect money. They multiply it, but they are not enslaved by it. They understand that money is a tool, not a source of identity. This detachment gives them freedom. It allows them to take bold risks when needed, to walk away from deals that compromise their values, to stay calm during market downturns. They are not emotionally erratic. They are structurally sound, and that soundness is what makes them steady under pressure. Money comes, money goes, But the person who has built discipline, strategy, and emotional stability will always rebuild. This is the ultimate wealth, the ability to regenerate, to rise again stronger and sharper, because your wealth is no longer outside you, it's in you. Lastly, let me anchor this entire part in one phrase: systems over willpower. Willpower is a limited resource. It fades, it depletes, but systems last. The rich don't rely on morning motivation. They rely on preset routines, automated decisions, and pre-scheduled blocks of focused work. They don't trust emotion, they trust engineering. And that's why they win. They've made their success boring, repeatable, predictable. They've removed as much friction as possible. They've reduced the number of decisions they make each day, not because they're lazy, but because they're wise, because they understand every decision costs energy, and energy must be preserved for the things that truly matter. This is the heart of the blueprint. Make success automatic, make excellence inevitable, and make wealth the byproduct of a well-designed life. The sixth layer of the mental blueprint to get rich is what I call strategic positioning. The mentally rich don't wait for opportunity. They position themselves for it. They place themselves where success is more likely. That means being in the right industry with the right skills at the right time. But more than that, it means becoming the kind of person that opportunity wants to find. Let's be clear, opportunity does not knock randomly. It knocks where preparation lives. It shows up where discipline is present. It gravitates toward individuals who are visible, valuable, and versatile. The wealthy understand this, so they reverse engineer. They ask, what kind of person does my dream opportunity require me to be? And then they become that person before the opportunity arrives. That way, when the door opens, they don't hesitate. They walk through confidently, completely, because they've already done the inner work. Now consider how most people approach their goals, passively. They hope someone will find them, discover them, choose them. The mentally rich flip that script. They don't want to be discovered, they want to be undeniable. And they become undeniable by mastering their craft, amplifying their signal, and making their value obvious. This is why wealthy individuals often seem lucky to outsiders. But what looks like luck is usually the result of years of invisible preparation, of consistency when no one was watching, of quiet sacrifices that built loud advantages. Positioning is not loud, it is deliberate. You don't need to scream to be seen, you need to be so effective that silence becomes your megaphone. Wealth comes to those who've made themselves valuable in a specific way. So ask yourself today, what am I known for? What do people associate with my name? What problem do I solve better than anyone else? That clarity turns skill into magnetism, and magnetism accelerates wealth. Let's now turn to the topic of reinvention. The mentally rich are not afraid to evolve. In fact, they see reinvention as a requirement for sustained success. The market changes, the world changes, technology shifts, and the wealthy move with it. Not reactively, but proactively. They pay attention to patterns. They sense what's coming, and instead of resisting the new, they embrace it. They upgrade their skill set. They pivot when necessary. They ask better questions. Where is the attention going? Where is the money flowing? What problems are emerging that I can solve? They do not stay stuck in outdated identities. They do not romanticize past success. They remain fluid, agile, and sharp. This is what allows them to stay relevant while others fade. Reinvention isn't about abandoning your values. It's about expressing them in ways that the future rewards. If you cling to the old, you will age with it. But if you learn to adapt, you become timeless. Let's now explore the power of strategic collaboration. The mentally rich understand that wealth is not built alone. They don't isolate themselves in the name of independence. They build networks. They form alliances. They surround themselves with people who elevate their thinking, challenge their assumptions, and sharpen their performance. Because they know proximity is power, you become who you spend time with, not just emotionally, but economically. If you're surrounded by 5 people with stagnant finances, hesitant goals, and scattered focus, you will become the 6th. But if you align with individuals who are intentional, disciplined, and abundant, your standards will rise automatically. So the wealthy choose their circle carefully, not just for comfort, but for growth. They don't fear outgrowing old relationships. They understand that seasons shift, and so must associations. Loyalty to your future is more important than loyalty to familiarity. If you're serious about wealth, audit your circle, expand it deliberately, invest in it consistently, and protect it fiercely. Now let's speak about delayed validation. The mentally rich don't need immediate applause. They are not addicted to attention. They understand that wealth often grows in silence, that greatness is cultivated in seasons of obscurity. While others post about their hustle, the rich are executing. While others broadcast, they're building. And because of that, they eventually emerge with substance, not just noise. If you constantly need to be seen, you are still outsourcing your sense of value. But once you learn to validate yourself through discipline, through impact, through results, external praise becomes a bonus, not a requirement. This detachment is powerful. It gives you emotional stability. It allows you to focus on the long game, and it makes you dangerous in the best way because you cannot be manipulated by applause or silence. The person who is mentally rich doesn't just look confident. They are, and their confidence comes from evidence, not ego. Let me introduce another critical concept: leverage through intellectual property. The wealthy don't just trade time, they build assets from their knowledge. They write books, create courses, build frameworks, develop systems. Why? Because information, when packaged and scaled, becomes income. It becomes legacy. You can only work so many hours, but your ideas, your insights, they can work while you sleep. The mentally rich understand this, so they document, structure, and distribute their wisdom. They don't hoard it, they share it, strategically. They create businesses, brands, and communities around their expertise. And because of that, they create revenue streams that are both scalable and sustainable. You don't need 1 million followers to do this. You need a sharp mind, a valuable skill, and the courage to package it. This is how modern wealth is built, not just by working hard, but by thinking smart. Now here's something subtle but essential. The mentally rich don't seek balance, they seek alignment. Balance implies equal time for everything. Alignment implies right time for the right things. Wealthy individuals know that there are seasons of deep work, seasons of rest, seasons of building, seasons of harvesting. They don't chase a mythical idea of perfect balance. They create harmony through awareness. They know when to push, when to pause, when to pivot. And most importantly, they design their life around what matters most. That design includes health, relationships, purpose, and joy, not as an afterthought, but as the foundation. Because true wealth is wholeness, and wholeness is built through conscious alignment between your values, your calendar, and your energy. So stop asking, how do I balance it all? Start asking, what season am I in, and what matters most right now? That question unlocks clarity, and clarity is the fuel of progress. Let's end this part with one of the most freeing truths you'll ever hear. You are allowed to be rich. You are allowed to win. You are allowed to rise. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you're aligned with the principles that produce abundance. Guilt is not a strategy. Shame is not a virtue. Poverty is not holiness. These are lies. Wealth, when built with integrity and intention, is one of the most powerful tools for good. It allows you to serve more, give more, build more, lead more. And if that's your heart, then wealth should be in your hands. Do not reject prosperity. Refine it, respect it, receive it. Because when good people become rich, the world becomes better. And when you become rich, not just in money, but in wisdom, in influence, in leadership, you become the kind of force this world desperately needs. As we enter the final layer of the mental blueprint to get rich, we must face the ultimate truth, the one that separates the few who create lasting wealth from the many who merely flirt with the idea of it. Wealth is a reflection. It is not a reward for your intentions. It is a mirror of your identity, your patterns, your alignment. If there is disorder in your finances, there is disorder in your mind. If there is chaos in your results, there is chaos in your behavior. And if there is inconsistency in your outcomes, there is inconsistency in your discipline. The mentally rich do not look outward for excuses. They look inward for patterns. They trace every result back to its origin, the thought, the habit, the standard that produced it, because they know that money is never the root issue. It is always the byproduct of structure, of self-command, of strategic thinking applied daily. Wealth is not a gift, it is a mirror. And when you begin to see money this way, you stop chasing it and you start earning it, magnetizing it, multiplying it. The most powerful force in wealth building is not capital, it's clarity. The average person is surrounded by noise, ideas, opinions, distractions, information overload. But the wealthy? They cut through that noise with ruthless clarity. They know exactly what they want, why they want it, and what it will take to achieve it. This clarity makes their decisions fast and clean. It eliminates hesitation. It protects them from temptation. It gives them a target to obsess over, and more importantly, it gives their subconscious a command to obey. Clarity is not something you find. It is something you build. You build it by sitting in silence, by writing your goals in detail, by reviewing your numbers, by asking better questions, and when you do this consistently, you develop what looks to others like foresight, but is really just focus. Focus so precise that the world begins to rearrange itself around your intent. That is the power of clarity, and that is why it sits at the top of the mental blueprint. Let's now speak of power. Real power. Not the loud, brash kind that needs recognition, but the quiet, immovable kind that shapes industries, moves markets, and alters destinies. The mentally rich understand that money is a form of power, but not the only one. True wealth is a layered form of power: intellectual power, emotional power, creative power, network power, and all of these must be cultivated on purpose. This is why the rich study daily, why they protect their peace, why they value thinking time, reading time, reflection time, because they're not just growing a bank account, they're growing capacity. They're expanding the vessel that holds the wealth, and that expansion is what keeps them ahead, because while others are reacting to change, they are anticipating it. While others are chasing opportunities, they are creating them. Power, when cultivated correctly, becomes influence, and influence, when used wisely, becomes legacy. Now we must address legacy itself, because wealth without purpose is just accumulation. The mentally rich do not build for ego, they build for impact. They ask, what will remain when I am gone? That question shifts their motives, it sharpens their focus, it elevates their standards. They stop chasing income and start building infrastructure, businesses that outlive them, systems that serve long after they've exited, principles that can be passed down, not just to heirs but to communities, industries, movements. This is what separates the truly wealthy from the temporarily rich. One builds for attention, the other builds for time. If you're listening to this, chances are you were not born into that kind of legacy, but you have the opportunity to create it, to become the first link in a new chain, to plant trees whose shade you may never sit under. That is wealth, that is meaning, and that is what this entire blueprint has been building toward. Let's now anchor all of this into one final command: act now. You have absorbed the blueprint. You have heard the principles, you have glimpsed what's possible, but information without execution is poverty in disguise. Nothing changes until you act, until you write the vision, block the time, raise the standard, make the call, read the book, launch the thing, discipline the habit. You cannot think your way into wealth, you must move. Not chaotically, but strategically. Start where you are, use what you have. Refuse to wait, refuse to settle. Refuse to shrink, because the version of you who is already wealthy is not waiting to be discovered. That version is waiting to be built, and you build it through action. Repeated, aligned, courageous action. The kind of action that feels unreasonable to your old self, but completely natural to your future self. The future does not belong to the hesitant, it belongs to the bold. Here is your final reminder: you were never broken, you were never lacking, you were simply unaligned, and alignment can be corrected quickly, quietly, powerfully. The day you decide that your current limitations are not life sentences but outdated coordinates, you begin the redesign, you begin the rebuild, you begin the reinvention. And in doing so, you reclaim what was always yours to claim: a life of mastery, impact, peace, and abundance. This blueprint is not reserved for the few, it is available to the focused. And if you've made it this far, you are no longer part of the crowd, you are part of the builders, the architects, the creators. Welcome to that rare and sacred place where intention becomes reality and wealth is simply the fruit of alignment. Now I leave you with a challenge. Don't just listen, lead. Don't just plan, produce. Don't just admire the blueprint, apply it. And if this message has stirred something in you, if it has awakened a knowing, a clarity, a command, then share it. Not for attention, but for alignment. Because every time one person installs this blueprint, the world becomes more capable, more stable, more powerful. That ripple begins with you, so begin. And as you do, remember, the richest people in the world were not born with answers. They were born with questions, and they answered them with action. So ask the right questions, take the right actions, and live the kind of life that turns your name into a blueprint for others to follow.